So I want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends at Ultimate Tax Group. Frank Mottek here. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start programs. Seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group at 888-711-4850 and see why they're different than other firms. They'll actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information, but also will go above and beyond and request the IRS to grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for this service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management while they work on your case. Just tell them Mottek sent you. Call Ultimate Tax Group now. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and fight for their clients. Good afternoon. We are doing it live here, live from the Beverly Hilton Hotel at the Milken Institute Global Conference 2025, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson at 3, and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek on Money. We are live on the air on 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, and all of your favorite podcast platforms. Big final day here at the Milken Institute Global Conference 2025, wrapping up 3 days of discussions on the markets, the economy, business, philanthropy, technology, AI, crypto, and the whole works here. Today is the day the Federal Reserve wrapped up a 2-day meeting in Washington with the decision to hold the line on short-term interest rates. Stocks did close higher today as investors assessed prospects for a planned U.S.-China trade negotiation this weekend, and also took in the Fed's decision on rates and the Fed Chair's news conference. We'll get into the details of all of that later this hour. Big focus here at the Milken Institute Global Conference was the massive recovery effort following this year's firestorms, which devastated the Pacific Palisades, Malibu, as well as Altadena. Today, Los Angeles business leader, civic leader, and philanthropist Rick Caruso came to the global conference for important meetings. Rick Caruso is also now the founder and chairman of Steadfast Los Angeles, one of the major initiatives leading the rebuilding of the Palisades and Altadena. We'll be joined by Rick Caruso shortly. Rick Caruso posted a powerful op-ed article titled "We're at the Tipping Point. The city's response must be more transparent and accountable." Today, the conference also heard from L.A. Mayor Karen Bass, who told the gathering this disaster recovery is, in fact, the fastest in modern California history. This is only a few dozen permits have been approved for reconstruction. We'll be speaking to Rick Caruso here shortly. First of all, let's take a look at the market action today. The Dow came in for a closing gain of 285 points to settle at 41,113. The S&P 500 moved up 24 to 5631. And the NASDAQ up 48 points at 17,738. The price of gold pulling back today by $14 at $3,377. Price of oil down 13 cents at $57.94 a barrel. The volatility index, the VIX index, down 5% today, and the yield on the 10-year note at 4.27%. Looks like crypto had a good day today, with Bitcoin reacting to the Fed holding the line on interest rates. The price of Bitcoin moved up $1,000 today at $97,230 here at the moment. Ethereum up $22 at $1,818, and Doge at the moment at 17 cents. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell repeated that the central bank need not be in a hurry to cut interest rates and could wait and see the impacts of tariffs to the economy. The Federal Reserve left interest rates unchanged at a range of 4.25% to 4.5% for the third straight meeting. The Fed also noted in its statement that the risk of higher unemployment and higher inflation has risen. The Fed chairman said in his words, "My gut tells me that uncertainty about the path of the economy is extremely elevated and that the downside risks have increased." He also said there are cases in which it would be appropriate for us to cut rates this year. There are cases in which it wouldn't We just don't know, he said. Markets had cautiously welcomed news this week, actually, that top U.S. and Chinese officials will meet this weekend for the first major trade talks between the two countries since President Trump hiked tariffs on Chinese imports to 145% in April. The idea that the U.S. and China would eventually get around to seal a deal has helped keep stocks moving up in recent weeks. We had that epic run-up. In fact, the longest stretch of gains in 20 years up until a couple days ago, but signs are that the meeting in Geneva will not bring a big trade deal. At least that's the indication at this point. President Trump today was asked during a news conference if he would lower tariffs on China to help foster more productive negotiations, and he responded no. NVIDIA moving higher today. We heard from Jensen Huang here at the conference here at the Milken Institute Global Conference yesterday. NVIDIA stock rose 3% today to end the trading day higher following a report that the Trump administration is looking to repeal AI chip export restrictions put into place under former President Biden. The Bloomberg report said the repeal is part of the President Trump's effort to change the so-called AI diffusion rule passed by Biden in January and set to go into effect in May. Our top story, the ongoing recovery effort here in Southern California following the firestorms in the Palisades, Malibu, and also in Altadena. Big focus of the discussions here at the Milken Institute Global Conference this year. Los Angeles business leader, civic leader, and philanthropist Rick Caruso attended the conference today. Also posted a powerful op-ed article titled "We're at the Tipping Point, and the city's response must be more transparent and accountable." This as the conference today heard from Mayor Bass, who told the gathering the disaster recovery is the fastest in modern history, which raised eyebrows because only a few dozen permits have been approved for reconstruction so far. Rick Caruso, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Well, it's my pleasure, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you very much for taking the call, and thank you for your leadership at Steadfast LA, which is leading the recovery efforts here in the Palisades as well as in Altadena. Give us your latest assessment of how things are going here.
You know, Frank, we're 4 months to the day of the fire, both in Altadena, Malibu, and Palisades. And listen, I give a great shout out and compliment to the Army Corps on the cleanup. I think they're doing a great job, and they're ahead of schedule from what I've been told and what I can see, and that's great. You know, quite frankly, I think the city and the county, so much more can be done. Not enough is being done. We've got to get people back into homes quickly and safely. There's still a lot of bureaucracy and red tape, and I know from talking to people in Altadena and Malibu and Palisades, a great amount of frustration. And as you just mentioned, I think in the city of LA, we had maybe 35 or 37 building permits issued. I don't know how, you know, the mayor can call that a success at all. Much more needs to be done, and there's a lot of work to be done. So I'm optimistic on the work that the team at Steadfast is doing. We're making a lot of great progress in supporting those communities. But the city and the county need to cut the red tape. They need to be moving quicker, and they need to be finding ways to expedite getting people building permits or back in their homes.
It's great seeing you here at the Milken Institute Global Conference, and love seeing people's reaction to your arrival here. And, of course, you command utmost respect here, and everyone appreciates your business community leadership and what you're doing now to lead the recovery here. Certainly, you've noted we have the best and brightest folks here all gathering in one place, and many of them based right here in Los Angeles. Tell us more about the Steadfast LA effort that you're leading and bringing people together.
As you know, Frank, formed Steadfast LA, which is a nonprofit, and I'm funding it. We hired a full-time team of people to operate it, which I'm involved with on a daily basis. I'm actually spending every minute of my day on the Steadfast work. And we've asked a little over a dozen people who are the best and the brightest in their industry to donate their time and their talent. And the organization is dedicated to rolling up their sleeves, getting their hands dirty, and solving problems that are hampering or preventing people rebuilding or getting back in their homes and getting these communities built. And we've done amazing work in, for example, convincing the city and the county to underground the power lines. We just delivered an AI model to the city and the county and the state, which will plan check people's plans to rebuild their home in a matter of hours and not months. Saves an enormous amount of time, obviously, but also an enormous amount of money. We are leading the effort along with J.J. Redick in rebuilding the park out in the Palisades. We are working to reimagine and help reimagine the downtown community of Altadena through the efforts of Gensler and Imagineering folks who are donating their time with that, working with the schools to get reopened, both public and private. So a lot of initiatives where I believe the private industry and the government has to work together, because as the private side, we can be much more innovative. We have a sense of urgency and follow-up that generally governments don't have. And this disaster is so big and so complex on the rebuilding side, it has to be a public-private partnership. Government alone just can't do it. And so I'm very happy with the progress we're making. I just want to see the government agencies doing more and making it easier for people to get back quickly.
On there live with Rick Caruso, who is the founder and chairman of Steadfast LA, one of the major initiatives leading the rebuilding efforts in the Palisades and Altadena. And you can see Rick Caruso's op-ed article, by the way, at steadfastla.com. And I see in that article you're very critical of the LA DWP, and the head of that department remains in her position. Mayor Bass was asked about this today. Apparently no plans to make any changes there at the LA DWP. Give us your thoughts about of that person that's still leading the LA DWP following this disaster.
How can this be, Frank? You had a massive failure of leadership on the mayor's part. You had a massive failure of leadership who's her appointee heading up DWP, who gets paid $750,000 a year. She did not have the reservoir filled. There was a shortage of 6 million gallons of water because of her failure of leadership, not having that reservoir filled or having a backup plan. We know now from the article that came out of the New York Times, they were thinking about a backup plan but never came up with one. And you can't tell me that the lack of water, the fact that the fire hydrants went dry while fighting a fire, didn't have a negative impact on the loss of homes. Of course it did. Many homes and communities, part of that community could have been saved. And to allow her to stay in her job, to me, is just crazy. That would never happen in private enterprise. And it shouldn't be happening in a public agency that's responsible to deliver and serve water and failed miserably to do that in protecting people's homes. And I don't know why the mayor is protecting her. And I think it shows a lack of leadership on the mayor's part on not having her resign or firing her and holding her accountable for this.
On there live with Rick Caruso, the only one that's been fired so far appears to be the fire chief. Any other thoughts about who else should be held accountable following this epic disaster here?
Well, certainly the mayor on down and her staff. I'd like to understand how we don't know yet. There's no transparency on an after-action report, how this happened, what mistakes were made, who's going to be held accountable for those mistakes, what decisions should have been made, why wasn't there better planning, why weren't the fire trucks pre-positioned, knowing these winds were coming. How after 4 months do we not have an after-action report? It may be that they don't want the answers, right? Because that's the problem with elected officials many times, not all the time, but many times, they don't want to be held accountable. So if there's no answers, nobody can be held accountable. Everybody is full of excuses. And so that's why I'm maintaining a critical voice on this, because I really do believe my voice is shared by so many of residents in Malibu and Altadena and the Palisades, where they want to have transparency, they want to have answers, and they want to know what the plan is going forward. There's none of that that's coming out, and here we are 4 months later. So I'm going to continue to call things out when they're great and compliment, and I'm also going to call things out when they're not so great and hold people accountable.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, as you know, the city has claimed that over 1,000 properties have been cleared, but only 31 permits issued, and not offering any real-time updates so the public can see how many permits are actually being issued. And you also point to the secrecy extending to the chief recovery officer position. Still no guidance about who inside City Hall is dedicated to overseeing the recovery strategy. Steve Soboroff was named for a while there, right? But he's out of the picture. So who's actually leading the effort, aside from your important public-private partnership right now?
I don't know, Frank,
Wow.
And that's why I raised it, on my op-ed. There should be an update from the mayor on what the status is of hiring a replacement. I don't know if she was asked that today or not. I wasn't in that session, but this is where you need the transparency. People's lives are at stake here. Their livelihoods are at stake. People lost businesses, lost their homes. People died. There has to be an amazing sense of urgency on having decisions made. So, the problem is the leadership is not equipped as an executive to make decisions, and we're seeing that play out every day. And unfortunately, it's coming at a very high cost to the people that are victims of these fires.
You, of course, took precautions ahead of that horrific firestorm at Palisades Village. What is the situation there at Palisades Village?
We're working on plans to reopen it. We will reopen it sometime next year.
I'm Paula Pan. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible because, let's face it, money's too important to wing it.
What you'll hear is a couple money geeks sitting and talking about this stuff that we're so passionate about.
You name it, anything that's on your mind. Retirement, debt, student loans, saving for college.
It's a personal finance journey. It is a wide-ranging squirrel conversation about the topic of personal finance and good financial planning. Super fun.
Afford anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
And we're going to be going in and upgrading some things. We've got some really exciting announcements on tenants that are going to be coming back and new tenants that are coming in. We'll probably make some announcements in a couple weeks. But I'm very optimistic about that. Fortunately, that's in our control. Fortunately, we were prepared. Our team was prepared, and we were able to save the village. Had the city been better prepared, I'm very confident most of those neighborhoods would have been saved too.
On the Air Live with Rick Caruso, and certainly addressing the entire business community here, Rick Caruso, which supports you wholeheartedly. What is your message to the community here and to get more people to support your efforts there at Steadfast LA?
Remain optimistic, remain hopeful. The Palisades, Altadena, Malibu is going to come back. We're going to be working very hard. Our team, as are many people in the private sector, leaning in and helping people. And they are going to come back. And I hope people get excited to rebuild. These communities were dear, wonderful communities that were part of the fabric of our great state and our great country. And it's important to bring them back. And so it has to be our mission every day to do this. And we will do it in spite of the bureaucracy that we face. But, hopefully we've all learned a lesson that leadership matters and leadership has consequences. And I hope at the city level, the county level, the state level, that we elect people who are actually competent, have experience, have executive skills, and are really focused on serving what's in the best interest of the public who they serve, rather their best interest or their need to get reelected. And we're seeing that play out. I think it's very visible where the failures have been. But in spite of that, we're going to make this happen, and we're going to get these communities rebuilt.
The use of technology, something that you advocate in this, using creativity and innovation in this process, AI as well, right? What are some of the tools you'd like to see used at this point?
Well, we developed the AI model. Our friends at Alcatech and Amazon, at the request of Steadfast, put together an AI model to approve these plans. And, that needs to get adopted immediately. The mayor said it's going to take a couple months. I don't know why it's going to take a couple months. It's fully designed and operating. And she just needs to instruct everybody to adopt it. She also needs to call people back into work. There's still plant checkers and everybody that are working remotely, and they need to be in the office. People need to be buckled down behind a desk and getting through these plans. But of course, technology, the infrastructure in these cities needs to be upgraded. The hydrants need to be upgraded. The power systems need to be upgraded. All that work should be getting done now, and it's not. So this is where, people are frustrated, and I'm frustrated. There needs to be traffic plans, logistic plans. These are enormous areas that need to get rebuilt at one time. You have to have a traffic and a logistic plan of moving construction traffic in and out while people are living there. Enormous amount of work to be done. That all could be done. And I believe the city, the state, and the county need to bring more private sector enterprises in who are actually wanting to get involved, that can help solve these problems quickly for them. Everybody in this region wants these communities to come roaring back and be successful and have people back in their homes. So everybody's willing to donate. I haven't called one person and asked them to donate their time and talent that have said no to me. And I want the city to be just following that. Pick up the phone and ask people for help.
Rick Caruso, thanks for taking the call here, and thank you very much for joining us here. Again, go to steadfastla.com to see Rick Caruso's op-ed article, which is titled, "We're at a Tipping Point. City's Response Must Be More Transparent and Accountable." Rick Caruso, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Great seeing you at Milken. What a great conference that was. So it was great having you be a part of that. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you very much. Talk to you soon, and we'll keep an open line to you. That is Los Angeles business leader, civic leader, and philanthropist Rick Caruso, who is also the founder and chairman of Steadfast LA, one of the major initiatives leading the rebuilding of the Palisades and Altadena. Live with us here, Mottek On Money, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Winning day for the stock market as the Federal Reserve held the line on short-term interest rates, and we'll talk more about that in the next half hour with Greg McBRIDE at Bankrate.com. The Dow coming in for a closing gain today of 285 points, 41,113. S&P 500 of 24 at 5,631. And the NASDAQ of 48 at 17,738. Price of gold hovering at around $3,377 an ounce. Oil just below $58 a barrel today, moving lower again. The volatility index pulling back 5%. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.27%. Looks like the crypto world liked what the Fed had to say today, with Bitcoin popping more than $1,000, above $97,000 now, $97,200 or so. Ethereum at $1,800 per Ethereum, and Doge at the moment at 17 cents. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here on 790 KABC, coming to you from the Milken Institute Global Conference 2025. And with me now is Charlie Gasparino from Fox Business, author of the book Go Woke, Go Broke, also New York Post columnist. Charlie, the tradition continues. Great to see you here, sir.
Yep, great conference. More crowded than I thought it'd be, and it's usually pretty crowded. So there's a lot of people looking for information, what's going on with tariffs, what the long and short-term economic impacts are going to be. I will say that there's an undercurrent of, obviously everybody's worried about what tariffs might do to the economy, but most people are kind of optimistic. They think, Scott Bessent's in charge and not Navarro. That's net positive. There's going to be deals. The real question is, if there's not deals, when you defy that expectation, the markets could be in for another significant turn down. I mean, if we don't get deals, I keep hearing they expect deals in the next 6 to 8 weeks, significant stuff, and movement on China. If that stuff doesn't happen, I think, based on everybody I talk to, you could see some nasty stuff go down.
Any other hot topics here? AI, crypto, the whole works?
This was really light on. Now, I didn't go to every panel, but There was almost no crypto here, which was interesting. That's at a neighboring conference, the Medici conference, which was lots of crypto, a lot of obvious optimism coming out of the Trump administration's deregulation of crypto. So that conference was packed over there. This conference did not do much crypto. I was surprised by that, but not so surprised. This is traditional finance at its best. This literally is private equity, hedge funds, big banks, big companies, real estate. That's what it's, and it grows every year. It's a testament to Michael Milken.
Absolutely, and you yourself conducted one of the big discussions here on alternative investments, right? And the International Ballroom, where the Golden Globes are held, the biggest ballroom here at the conference. So congratulations on that, Charlie. Any big takeaways from your panel there?
Alternative investments is everything but the public markets, essentially, and there's a lot in there, including crypto. One of the sort of interesting discussions we had was on debt, on private debt, that is, essentially non-bank lending to companies, and a lot of that debt is starting to get distressed, and people are worried whether that's a canary in a coal mine for maybe the economy not being as strong as the sort of top line numbers suggest. That you do have these companies right now that are beginning to show real stress, and if we do hit a recession, that could get obviously a lot worse.
And one subject that's being discussed here quite a bit is something you wrote about in your book, DEI and Go Broke is the name of the book. Getting a great response here?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think a lot of these big companies thought DEI was a given. They had to do it, and then they're, like tariffs, they're running up against an administration who really believes it's illegal. And one of the interesting things I think is, I saw Brendan Carr, the head of the FCC. He was bouncing around here. One of the things I know about Brendan Carr, that in order to do a media deal, you got to get FCC approval. From what I understand, what's on his checklist, if you want your media deal approved, is that you will disavow and end DEI. He believes it's illegal. He believes that the Supreme Court, when it ruled on that affirmative action case, said it was illegal. And he's making it sort of a mandatory a prerequisite, I should say, for any deal to get done. You have to disavow DEI. So if you see the new deal with Skydance, it's a LA company run by Keith Ellison, Larry Ellison's son, Larry Ellison from Oracle. And they're essentially looking to buy Paramount, which owns CBS. In order to get get the approval for this deal and for allow CBS to get its broadcast license, because it will need his approval to get local broadcast license, they're going to have to disavow DEI. I understand they will.
You've been following that very, very closely, and your column in the New York Post. And anything else you can tell us more about it? When is that going to come to a head, you think?
That's a great question. I think we're at the, I say 5-yard line right now, but then again, you can get stalled at the 5-yard line.
Wow, so that is a big story. Anything else that's gotten your attention here with that huge list of subjects that are being discussed here, and certainly there have been some lighter moments too, and pretty much everything from A to Z here.
Yeah, no, it's a great conference. It's a little bit of everything.
We're at the Puppy Playtime Pavilion here.
Yeah, I'm going to go in there in a minute. But I did have some downtime, and one of the great things about this place is that there's so many thought leaders here, public intellectuals. I got to see the historian Niall Ferguson, the guy I know pretty well, and Niall gave this great talk about Kissinger. I bought the book. I suggest people buy the book. It's a he's an historian that is impeccable with his research, and he's a good writer too.
I'm Paula Pan. I help people make the smartest money decisions possible, because let's face it, money's too important to wing it.
What you'll hear is a couple money geeks sitting and talking about this stuff that we're so passionate about.
You name it, anything that's on your mind: retirement, debt, student loans, saving for college.
It's a personal finance journey. It is a wide-ranging squirrel conversation about the topic of personal finance and good financial planning. Super fun.
Afford anything. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
In fact, he was on the show yesterday, so I'm right with you on that. And any other books for you?
I don't know. Who's going to pay me?
Well, you've done an amazing job. You've got a packed schedule, so I really appreciate your stopping here, Charlie. Thank you very much. It's always fantastic to see you here in Beverly Hills at the Milken Institute Global Conference. Hope to do it again next year. And Of course, between now and then, you have an open line, and look forward to talking to you from your headquarters back east.
Anytime. One of the highlights of coming here to Milken is hanging out with Frank Mottek.
That is very, very kind. And let me ask you one last question. I guess you were inspired by these conversations. You got your own podcast now.
I do. It's called Risk and Reward. It's on. We drop it every Friday. I do it with a gentleman named Bob Sloan who runs S3 Data. Listen. This is about investing, and we don't get very political unless politics impacts investing. We do a lot of Bob's research dives into short interest and what it's telling about the markets and specific stocks. So if you want to know about investing, where to put your money, this is a good podcast to listen to.
That's great. Charlie Gasparino, Fox Business, and the great podcast now, and the New York Post, and the book, Go Woke, Go Broke. Charlie, thank you very much for joining us here.
Anytime, Frank. Thank you.
All right, have a safe trip back. Charlie Gasparino here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC. The other big news today, the Federal Reserve wrapping up a two-day policy-setting meeting today, leaving short-term interest rates unchanged for the third straight Fed meeting. The Fed also noting in its statement that the risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation had risen. Chairman Jerome Powell had a full-blown news conference following the Fed's decision on interest rates and a statement on the economy. We'll get a thorough update on that and the impact on the economy from Greg McBRIDE, will be joining us, chief financial analyst at Bankrate.com. We'll go to Washington for the latest on that big story. But first, the latest on your ride this afternoon back here in Southern California on 790 KABC. So I want to take a moment to talk about owing taxes and my trusted friends at Ultimate Tax Group. Frank Mottek here. If you owe back taxes or have unfiled returns, the IRS offers Fresh Start programs. Seize this rare chance now and call Ultimate Tax Group at 888-711-4850 and see why they're different than other firms. They'll actually call the IRS with you on the phone to gather your current account information, but also will go above and beyond and request the IRS to grant you immediate protection from collections actions like bank levies and wage garnishments. Other companies charge $500 to $1,000 for this service, but Ultimate Tax Group won't. A-plus rated 5-star service with direct access to ownership and upper management while they work on your case. Just tell them Mottek sent you. Call Ultimate Tax Group now. They are the best. 888-711-4850. Again, that's 888-711-4850. They care and fight for their clients. Mottek On Money continues here, live from the Milken Institute Global Conference 2025, the final day of the conference, and it has been packed with great information, a lot of insight, and just absolutely a terrific experience here as always, with the whole world coming here to take in all the great sessions. Back east, though, big decision was made on interest rates and a statement on the economy and a full-blown news conference from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell. The Fed holding the line today on short-term interest rates, and the Fed Chairman repeating that the Fed need not be in any hurry to cut rates. The stock market moving higher today in reaction to that, as well as anticipation that the U.S. and China will finally get to talking about trade and tariffs this weekend. Joining us live now is Greg McBRIDE, who's one of the top folks there at Bankrate.com. And, Greg, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Great to be with you, Frank. Thanks for having me.
All right. Were you one of those in the audience there today with the Fed chairman?
No, my colleague Mark Hamrick was, though.
Great. Well, it's great to have you with us here. And give us an update on what came out of that big announcement today.
Yeah, I mean, Powell really reiterated just how solid shape the economy itself is in. I mean, we've seen consumer and business sentiment just completely fall off the table. But when you look at metrics like consumer spending, unemployment, things are holding up quite nicely. I will say, though, that can change and change in a hurry, particularly on the employment side. So, even though Powell took the stance of the economy's in good shape, we don't have to be in a hurry, the fact is, as we've seen in previous periods, the health of the labor market can unravel quickly. So them being in a position where they start cutting rates, it might not be as far off as the economic data, 4.2% unemployment rate might otherwise suggest.
Right. We did see a bit of a change in the Fed statement that came out with the announcement today, saying the risks of higher unemployment and higher inflation had risen. This, as we're watching this tariff drama play out, what do you make of that part of the statement today?
Well, for the better part of the last 3.5 years, it's been all about inflation. The Fed has two things that they're charged with: keeping prices stable, in other words, low inflation, but also maximum employment, keeping unemployment low. And we've really only had to focus on one of those for the last 3+ years. But now, there is a risk that, all this uncertainty is a real headwind to the economy. Layoffs are still very, very low, but hiring is slowing down. If we start to see a deterioration in the labor market, that's the type of thing that would get the Fed's attention, and that's probably the catalyst for them eventually starting to cut interest rates.
Right, and the Fed chairman did use that word uncertainty, too. Uncertainty about the path of the economy, extremely elevated, he said. That's pretty significant.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I really think that's kind of the word of the day, in the sense that, it really kind of sums up the mood that a lot of consumers have. Certainly on the business side, businesses that face uncertainty, they don't go out and hire a bunch of people. They don't expand production. They don't make investments. They sit back and wait for the dust to settle. Well, that in and of itself is a drag on economic growth. And so, I think those are some of those risks that Powell was referring to.
All right, and get a load of this. You see the quote, there are cases, he said, in which it would be appropriate for us to cut rates this year. There are cases in which it wouldn't. We just don't know. That's pretty vague there.
You just leaving his options open, no question about it. In typical central banker fashion, you don't want to paint yourself into a corner and, doing the linguistic gymnastics necessary to give himself maximum flexibility.
Right. Well, you've been doing this for many, many years, and certainly over the years we've seen these Fed announcements and these. He's in recent years, of course, the Fed started the news conference after the announcement. So, but they're trying to be more plain spoken. Maybe he was going out of his way to do that. Remember when before Ben Bernanke, we had Alan Greenspan, and some of his language, we used to call it green Spanish. We had to get a dictionary to try to figure out exactly what he was saying.
Yeah, Greenspan was deliberately opaque. I mean, Greenspan had a funny quote one time. He said, "If you understood what I was saying, I must have misspoken."
And that says it all there. So certainly Jerome Powell, and you've covered his news conferences and his comments, seems to go out of his way to try to be more plain-spoken and understandable, which really is what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the bottom line for consumers is that interest rates, they're not going to come down right away. And so particularly from the borrowing side, you need to focus on putting the hammer down on paying off that high-cost credit card debt, take advantage of those low 0% balance transfer offers. That can really turbocharge your efforts. And anytime there's uncertainty, it pays to double down on those efforts to boost emergency savings. That's really the buffer between you and high-cost debt or prematurely rating the retirement account when something goes wrong, right? So if you've got just a little bit more savings and less debt, you're better positioned to weather whatever may come our way economically, whether that's, a surge in expenses or an income disruption or just unplanned expenses. Having that money tucked away, it's good insulation, but also helps you sleep better at night.
And certainly the Fed holding the line on short-term interest rates at this level, not such great news for consumers, with credit card interest rates still hanging at or near all-time highs. And what about inflation, too, on how the tariffs will impact prices? Any insights from the Fed chair about how tariffs will impact prices ultimately?
Well, it's a pretty widespread consensus among economists that we're going to see prices go up. The question is it a one-time bump, or is it the beginning of this self-reinforcing cycle of ever higher prices? If you start to have supply chain constraints, that's what could happen. We experienced that coming out of the pandemic. And, that's just, talk about Powell giving himself maximum flexibility and not painting himself into a corner. That's why he wants to keep his options open. If inflation is just a temporary one-time price bump, they can look past it. If, however, it becomes more of a self-reinforcing cycle, that's a bigger problem.
All right, and it looks like he's securing his job for the time being.
Yeah. although he doesn't give that much, he doesn't give that much airtime. He said he was focused on just doing the task at hand and, with what they've got at a challenging time. But
sure.
Markets certainly responded well to that last week.
Greg McBRIDE at Bankrate.com. Greg, thank you very much for taking the call on the big story today, the Fed holding the line on short-term rates, and hearing from the Fed chairman today. Live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC. Stay tuned now for the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang, and I'll be back with more at 4 tomorrow afternoon right here on Mottek On Money on 790 KBC.
Former MLB All-Star Sean Casey, a.k.a. The Mayor, keeps hitting it out of the park.
Take my 30 years of experience. Take the wisdom and knowledge I've learned from the failures when I got sent down my rookie year, all the injuries I had to overcome. Your mind is the most important tool you have in life. Be relentless. Keep charging. It matters how you talk to yourself, how you look at the world. That matters. We talk about that. I don't know. I'm fired up. Baseball's back, and it's going to be incredible. I love it.
The Mayor's Office with Sean Casey from Believe.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.